Good morning, everybody. Welcome to City Hall, welcome to Council Chambers, and welcome to a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council for today, Wednesday, October 27th, 2004. The City Council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m., and meetings are open to the public. We do invite you to join us. For members of the public unable to attend council meetings, we can be viewed live on your cable station, Channel 35. We can also be viewed live via webcast from the city's homepage or heard via council phone. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Cardenas, Garcetti, Gruel, Han, Labange, Ledlow, Miskowski, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Smith, Villaraigosa, Weiss, Sine, Padilla, 12 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The council is officially in session. First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Smith moves, Ms. Perry seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Ludlow moves, and Mr. Zine seconds.
Mr. President, this is a time for comments from the public on items not on council's agenda.
Let's actually dispense with consent items, and then we'll come back to general public comment.
Okay, on the regular agenda, items for which public hearings have been held, items 1 through 10. Item number 1 is a commissioner. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Let's hold that temporarily on the desk.
And
Next item.
I'm sorry, and on item number 2, I believe there's a request to continue that matter to November 5th.
Okay, members, request to continue item number 2 to November 5th. Any objection? Seeing none, item 2 is continued. Next
And-
item, please.
And that would leave 3 through 10 before council.
Leaving items 3 through 10, matters which have had public hearings, a motion from the floor would be required to reopen the public hearing. If there is no such motion, do we have any requests for specials? Mr. Ludlow?
One sec.
Okay.
Okay, and also, Mr. President, excuse me, on item number 5, there
Mr.
is...
President, I'm sorry. Number 4?
4, call special by Mr. Ludlow.
I'd like to continue that for 2 weeks.
Okay, any objection to continuing item 4 for 2 weeks?
Hold that on 4.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
I'm sorry, Mr. President. On item number 5, there is an Arts Parks Committee report that has been distributed to the council members, and I believe the recommendation on that matter would be to adopt the Budget and Finance Committee report.
Okay, Ms. Miskowski moves. That'll be our action. Any specials, members? Items 3 through 10. Ms. Miskowski?
Mr. President, I would like to call 3 special. I will open a public hearing. I understand there's someone here from the Alzheimer's Foundation, so I'd like to, that. And then item 10, I understand Mr. Labange wanted called special.
Ms. Miskowski calls item 3 special, 10 call special for Mr. Labange.
And excuse me, Mr. President, on item number 4, was that matter to be continued for 2 weeks?
We're
being
waiting on
discussed.
Mr. Ludlow here. For item 4, Mr. Ludlow?
Can you hold that on the desk?
Okay, we'll call that special for the time being. On the balance of items 3 through 10, Madam Clerk, please open the roll, please close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Those are approved. Next item, please.
The next items are items for which public hearings have not been held, items 11 through 24. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay. And we do have cards on item number 11. We'll call that special to hear from members of the public. On the balance of items 12 through 24, I do not have requests from members of the public to address the council. Public hearings are open and closed. Any specials, members, 12 through 24? Seeing none, let's open the roll on those items, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items are closed sessions 25 through 28, and also there is a request on item 28 to continue that matter for 1 week, and that would be November 3rd.
Okay, members, any objection to continuing item 28? Seeing none, item 28 is continued 1 week, and we'll hold the balance of the closed session items on the desk. Next item, please.
That concludes the agenda. Do you wish to go back to the items called special, or do you wish to take public comment at this time?
Well, let's take item number 1 first. It's a commission appointment, and then we'll go to general public comment and return to the items called special. So item number 1, please, if Ms. Magana Withers can come forward. Members, we do have a committee report recommending approval of our commission nominee. Do we have members of the council wishing to ask questions at this time? Mr. Cardenas? Want to say hello?
Hello, Ms. Magana. How are you?
How are you, Councilman?
Good to see you.
Same here.
So you're ready to give free time to the city?
Yes, to the city of Los Angeles.
Yes. Well, I happen to know the talent that you have. You're very bright and very caring of the community. So I think that we're very, very fortunate to have you to give up this very, very valuable time and talented time that you're willing to give to the city. So I just want to thank you very much and
you.
just vouch for the fact that, you know, I've known you and your character for many, many, many years, and I'm glad that you're willing to serve the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
Ms. Gruhl?
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas, and we had the pleasure of meeting briefly last week, but colleagues, she is a constituent of mine in the 2nd Council District, and I know that Mr. Weiss, who chairs the ITGS committee, and many of us on the council looking to this year being kind of a watershed year for the issue of our cable operators and renegotiating those contracts, so it's going to be a big year, and we're looking forward to your participation and knowledge and making that happen, and know that each of us on this council encourage you to come to us, talk to us when there are issues or problems. That's really a team effort and a partnership, and I echo Councilmember Cardenas's comments about your willingness to serve your free time to give back to the city and serve on the IT Commission. So thank you very much. We look forward to sitting down and talking about some of the particulars as you go forward in this position. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. And before we proceed with the vote, just want to add my words of congratulations and thank yous as well. It certainly is an important commission. I'm sure your experience in a number of areas is going to serve you well. And on a final note, something Mr. Reyes is passionate about, we have another commission nominee from the East San Fernando Valley, so we're still struggling to achieve that equity of representation on commissions as well. Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, President.
Thank you. Forthwith on item number 1, please. And that'll bring us, members, to general public comment for today's meeting. The council calls forward at this time Mercedes Ruano, Juan Cortez, and Rosa Ramirez.
Excuse me, Mr. Padilla. This is for you. You've been served. It's a deposition subpoena for personal appearance. Thank you very much.
Sergeant, please.
Can you give this to Mr. Padilla for me, please? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. We are here representing South Central Farmers Community Garden, and I wish we can keep it, because it's something really good for our families. It's a family of 4 children who all of them go and work there, and they know how to work the land. So it's for us really important to keep it, and that's all I wish. I also work as a teacher, and I take my children there to show them how to do the planting and everything there. So, it's really important for us to keep it, and I wish we can keep it. Thank you.
Buenos días. Juan Cortés. Juan Cortés. Juan Cortés. No estoy de acuerdo que sea en el jardín, porque de allí comemos nuestra familia y llevamos los hijos a que siembren también, que cultiven matas y todo.
Good morning, my name is Juan Cortés. I'm not in agreement for the garden to close because we take our family there. We also raise a lot of nutritional food that we use to feed our family and everything.
Thank you.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Rosa Ramírez. Yo también vengo representando el Jardín Sur Centro de Los Ángeles, y también no estoy de acuerdo a que nos quiten el jardín, porque la verdad allí donde llevamos a nuestra familia, a nuestros hijos, también nuestros nietos, no queremos perder las costumbres que traemos de nuestros países, porque es un lugar muy seguro que tenemos para nuestra familia también, y no queremos que nos quiten, que nos dejen para poder trabajar en nuestras tierras, que no se nos pierdan las costumbres. Rosa Ramírez.
Good morning, my name is Rosa Martinez. I'm also in agreement. I don't agree that for this garden to be taken away. We carry out a lot of our history, customs from our country. We plant plants and vegetables and fruit, not only for our family, for our grandchildren as well. We use that land to work for ourselves, for our family. So I would like to ask you to please keep that garden open. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This concludes general public comment for today's meeting. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 3 was called special by Councilmember Miskowski.
And Ms. Miskowski, did you wish to speak first or hear from?
No, I was just going to move a public hearing.
Okay, Mr. Peter Braun, please come forward at this time.
President Padilla, members of the City Council. My name is Peter Braun. I'm Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association. We have been before the City Council before, and I thank members of the City Council who have been friends of the Alzheimer's Association. And I'm here to speak about Alzheimer's disease. I don't think there's one person in this room who has not been touched by this disease. 5 million Americans suffer from Alzheimer's disease. 12 million people, sufferers, family members. 500,000 people in the state of California. Over 75,000 people in our city. 1 out of 10 of those over 65, and yes, my friends, nearly half of those over 85 years old, your parents and your grandparents, my parents, and the cost to our society, to our country, and think about that in terms of the city of Los Angeles, the state of California, $100 billion a year in direct and indirect costs. That's in 2004. I'm a prime member of the baby boomer generation. In merely 20 years, when we come to that time, there will be an explosion because there is a time bomb ticking. If there is no cure in 20 years, as the baby boomer generation ages, it will bankrupt Medicare, it will bankrupt Medi-Cal, and it will impact all of us. So indeed, there is something that our city can do. There is something that the City Council can do. In memory of former President Ronald Reagan, there is a bill, H.R. 4595, in the U.S. Congress. It calls for a substantial increase in Alzheimer's research. To give you a sense, 1990, $165 million for Alzheimer's research. Today, nearly $700 million, but only 17% of research projects that can be funded indeed are being funded. That is because with progress, unfortunately, the increases are not there. In the last 3 years, we have had only 2% increase in funding from the National Institute on Aging. So are we going to have progress slow as our parents are touched by this disease, as our healthcare system is bankrupted in 20 years? So indeed, there is something that the City Council can do. And again, I thank the members of the City Council that have brought this to attention. Thank you. We are calling for and asking and requesting that the City Council request that the City of Los Angeles be formally on record to support H.R. 4595 to double the increase in federal funding from its current level of $700 million to $1.4 billion in memory of former President Ronald Reagan, who, as you know, suffered from Alzheimer's disease. It would also increase substantially support for caregivers. So we at the Alzheimer's Association requested the City Council and the City of Los Angeles that you call upon our federal legislature to support this effort. As Maureen Reagan, former President Reagan's daughter, who passed away 3 years ago, said, this must be the last generation to face this disease. So on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association, I ask the City Council to support H.R. 4595, and together, we must fight this thief of the mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This once again concludes public comment for item number 3. Members wishing to be heard, beginning with Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Miskowski, for seconding this motion. As you so eloquently spoke of, it is a disease that we must fight and must find a way to solve. Because what is truly so sad, we're all here in this room today. We're all able to understand and maybe meet and greet each other. But there are thousands and thousands of people across this country who have not been able to overcome the challenges of this disease. And we have to find a way to solve it. It's something that we must do, and we hope the power of this city council in supporting federal legislation to provide funding will help all Americans, especially those in Southern California here in Los Angeles. Thank you and the Alzheimer's Association for your efforts and bring it to our attention. And I call for a unanimous vote on this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Any other members wishing to be heard? If not, can we please open the roll on the item? Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
That item is approved. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 4 was being held on the desk, and I believe there was a request to continue that matter.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is send this matter back to the Arts and Parks Committee for some refinement on this issue.
Is there any objection to that, members? If not, number 4 will be sent back to the Arts and Parks Committee for further deliberations there. Next item, please.
Item number 10 was called special for Councilmember Labange, and there is an amending motion that has been distributed to the council members.
Okay.
As the amendment's
Labange?
been circulated, this is for the Orange Line and our work that we're doing in the San Fernando Valley, and it's important, the technical change. I would ask for an aye vote.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this item? If not, please open the roll on this as amended. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
That is approved. Mr. Labange.
Yeah, Mr. President, could we welcome, please, 26 members of a delegation from China who are here learning about government. Would I have our special guest from China please rise and get welcomed by the Los Angeles City Council. Xie Xie. The great thing about this city council, as you observe it, is anyone from the public could fill out a card and speak to their government right here from the public podium here. So I hope you learn a lot about Los Angeles city government, and thank you for visiting us here. Xie Xie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Xie Xie. Our next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, is item number 11, and that was called special for cards from the public. And there also is a community impact statement that was submitted by the Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council. It has been distributed to the council members.
Okay.
And do you wish to have me read that into the record?
Is there a portion of it that is the recommending?
Yes, there is a summary.
Why don't we, Ms. Miskowski?
The Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council spokesperson at the head of the list and
Okay.
the opponents, so I
That'll
think
be
they're
right.
here to speak for themselves.
Okay, and we'll certainly enter that into the record, and I know that's been distributed to all the council members as well. Okay, we have item 11. Is there a motion to open public hearing on this, or?
I move, it's a required public hearing. I
Okay.
move that we begin with, let's try 20 minutes on each side.
Okay. All right. We'll have 20 minutes on each side. We have a number of speaker cards, both for and against, and I will start with the opposition to this matter before us. I'd like to ask the president of the Neighborhood Council, Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council, Suzanne Thompson, to come forward. And if people can please line up behind the podium, and we'll ask people to be conscious of everyone else's time, and we'll get through as many of the cards in 20 minutes as we can for each side. Celis King will be right after that. 4215 will be after that. Sid Abel, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Garcetti, I would ask that the Neighborhood Council be given more than 2 minutes, as we filed our community impact statement on September 30th, and it was not included and distributed to the council members until this morning. And members of the Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council have spent a lot of time on this issue, and I would like to have a little bit extra time to highlight the summary on this.
You can have more than 2 minutes. It'll come out of the 20 minutes, though, just to keep things in line with the motion.
First of all, I wanted to bring to the attention about the community impact statement not being on the agenda, and then, like I said, it was filed on the 30th of September. And fortunately, you have the information in front of you. Also, the Neighborhood Council submitted letters March 23rd to our council members, Cindy Miskowski, and the Board of Recreation and Parks. And I'd like to read the summary from the community impact statement. Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council opposes a draft ordinance in the matter of amending LA Municipal Code 4215 and the related rules proposed to implement the ordinance on the Venice Boardwalk as identified in report number R04-0348 addressed to the City Council by the City Attorney on August 9th, 2004. The draft ordinance's proposed implementation would unnecessarily and randomly remove access for as many as 200 persons to the free speech zone on the Venice Boardwalk and could possibly reduce tourism in Venice. The draft ordinance's proposed implementation also raises First Amendment issues related to restriction on free speech. The letter and the position of the Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council, which was transmitted again on March 24th, was asking for mediation. And I also attended the hearing in Councilmember Labange's Arts Committee, and unfortunately there was not a quorum, so he did take public comment. And at that time, and at the end of that session, Councilmember Labange, who unfortunately isn't here at the moment, but he thought mediation was a good idea. And so this is what we would like to see happen. The Grassroots Venice strongly urges the proposed amendment to be set aside and that the discussion of the problems and issues on the boardwalk be started with a clean slate. A professional mediator should be hired by the city. The mediator should identify stakeholder groups on the boardwalk, including artists, free speech advocates on the west side, vendors, businesses on the east side, residents in the immediate area, homeless persons in the immediate area, and Venice residents in general. Issues and concerns of these groups should be identified and the process of reaching a consensus should begin. And this was voted 16-0 in favor of this letter going in front of you. And the other, on our page 2 of our community impact statement, there's something that I hope that everybody here understands. And it's on page 2 under impact of the draft ordinance. And one thing that I'm going to point out right now is the identification of exactly 44 specific spaces, each 20 feet by 8 feet deep, for use for performance, and exactly 62 specific spaces, each 10 feet wide by 8 feet deep, for all other, quote, public expression activities undertaken by permit holders, which would include non-performing artists vending their original and signed wares and other engaged in selling of merchandise, carrying or making religious, political, or philosophical, ideological message or statement which is intertwined with merchandise. What we're saying is we're actually reducing the space for people to be on the boardwalk, and what you're doing here today, if you pass this ordinance, you are going to be hurting some of the people at the bottom of the income level the most. And I find that in a day where jobs and people are hurting and people are being laid off is unconscionable for the city to do this to some of the least among us. So I ask you today to please hear out everybody, give us some time. There's not a rush at the public hearing. Somebody stated that the boardwalk looked like a swap meet and the Venice Centennial is coming up in July. Is that what it's about? Come on, folks. This is our city. We love it. Please oppose this proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can please remind folks that I appreciate folks' enthusiasm. We do have a clock running, so the more applause that we have, it's 20 minutes for each side. So I just want to remind folks, and we have about 25 more cards to go through. Mr. King.
Hi, my name is Celeste King, and I'm the Vice Chair of the California Congress of Racial Equality, and I'm here in opposition to any action to be taken by the Council in regard to approving this particular issue. One of the things that we are concerned about at CORE is the fact that there is a much broader impact than just Venice. And in fact, if we look at Venice as there is a cultural tradition there, and we do support the neighborhood council's position in that regard. However, when we look at it from a different standpoint, we realize that this community is in fact kind of under siege already, and that Venice is also part of that siege. The abrogation of freedom of speech and freedom of expression through regulation is an old tactic. It is one in which we as a community cannot continue to put up with. One of the things that we are looking at is that there are other free speech areas here in this city, in the parks. Is this the beginning of the destruction or the dismantling of that? And if it is, then where are we going to be in terms of our ability to have an area where we can express ourselves freely without deterrence, in a civil fashion? In that regard, we at CORE would like to say one other thing. We appreciate the consideration of this council, and we hope that they will do what's in the best interest of the people of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Albert Culbertson. Albert Culbertson is our next speaker. Is Albert Culbertson here? He's coming up from the back, and after that, Sid Abel will be and then Jerry Rubin.
Hello. The new proposed ordinance, I feel by its very title of a free speech permit program, is unconstitutional, and it continues to get worse from there on. I think that it is attempting to undermine and override the permit I have as a United States citizen. It's called the Constitution of the United States. I think that the United States in general is a free speech zone. I think that we need to sit down and with our heads and hearts try to figure out our problems for everybody's mutual benefit. I would like to see them table a vote on this issue until our new council person is in office after the election. Maybe we'll have an elected one this time. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sid Abel, to be followed by Jerry Rubin.
Thanks. I'm an artist, I'm a painter. I live in another country, I'm a U.S. citizen. I come back to this country, I'm very proud to show my work and have it looked at. If nobody gives me a dime, that's okay. Because my purpose is art, it's a communication, and hopefully it will make somebody feel a little better today. If that's all I can do for mankind in a very tough time, at least I can do that. Please don't take that away from me. That's my gift. Others like it. I think that communication is highly important. Of course it is. It's a universal solvent. Please remember that. That is a philosophical statement. It is true. It is only fair to take into consideration all of the information before one makes a judgment. The last thing I want to say before I forget is I hope you will consider what is the greatest good, not just what is the greatest good for somebody's pocketbook. I stand on the boardwalk, I sell my art because people like it, I'm lucky. But if nobody did, I get one smile, I've been paid. It comes from my heart. I fly from another country. If you put in a lottery, I won't bother to come. I'll go somewhere else. I don't need Venice. I don't need you. Obviously.
Thank you.
Somebody needs something in this world. That's about all I can say because I forgot what else I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Jerry Rubin is our next speaker, and then Ronnie Alcalay. Ronnie Alcalay will be next, to be followed by Bill Greenslade.
Thank you very, very much. Council members, it's an honor to be here. Been here many times before on this issue. Under Ruth Galanter's leadership, there was an ordinance passed after years of work. The merchants supported it, the performers, the artists, free speech groups. Everyone agreed that free speech should be institutionalized on the Venice Boardwalk. And it took a number of lawsuits before that even, before 4215 was put into play. The truth of the matter is, after Ruth Galanter left office, enforcement of that policy just ceased 100%. It's not fair to blame us because of the lack of enforcement on the public side of the boardwalk and make it look like it's out of control. People should not be over there selling sunglasses. People should not be over there selling sandals. People should not be over there selling backpacks. The merchants should not be bringing their merchandise over to do it. There is nothing wrong with that ordinance that Ruth Galanter worked so hard. I don't know if any of you were on the council then, a lot of new people. But the truth of the matter is the boardwalk was working pretty good, albeit it had its challenges. Some musicians were too loud, but that's the way it always is in a vibrant place. The truth of the matter is, if the ordinance on the book is enforced, and if we continued the biannual networking meetings that Ruth Galander instituted between the police and performers and artists, we wouldn't be here today. Now, I know you usually listen to the council person in that district, but this is a historic moment, my friends. This is a time to do the right thing, because everybody, whatever council district you're in, your family and friends visit Venice Beach, and you know this is a unique place, and you know this is not the right approach, and you know it'll be fraught with problems. I spoke with my attorney today. It's not a threat. It's just a reality. There'll be a lawsuit. I know that your attorney feels this will pass constitutional muster, but they said that before in our other lawsuits. This is a time to delay it. When the Venice Neighborhood Council that was appointed unanimously votes against this, and Councilwoman Miskowski, with all respect, should be listening to them and is not, something is wrong. Something is drastically wrong. Now, this, my wife and Marissa and I made this up. It's a Save Venice Beach Boardwalk 100-foot-long art petition. We asked people on the boardwalk for the last few days to write or draw their message to save the free spirit of Venice Beach and to oppose this ordinance. There are signatures here from all over the world, people that love the free spirit of Venice. After the boardwalk refurbishment plan a few years ago, even the people that wanted to turn it then into a upscale mall and failed said they would never restrict the performers and artists. Everyone was saying that. Now they broke their promise, and it's unfair for Cindy Miskowski not to carry on Ruth Galander's leadership of mediative, real free-spirited solutions. We hope you'll change your mind. I know that they say that the fix is in, but I don't believe that. I think this is a time to really get back to the drawing board, because Cindy Miskowski will be leaving office on July 1st. That's just a couple of... And very briefly, to conclude, I came out to Venice Beach from Philadelphia on July 4th, 1967, and fell in love with the place. I have a special place in my heart for Venice, even though my wife and I don't live here anymore. A greedy landlord pushed us out a few years ago. But my heart and soul is in Venice, and I'll do everything I can, and I hope you will too, to keep this free spirit alive. What should I do with this scroll?
Well, if you'll give it to the guard over here, he'll make sure that it's
And we
distributed.
give it to you from everybody here.
Thank you very
with the
much.
free spirit of Venice
Appreciate it.
in mind. Thank
All
you.
right. We have 6 minutes left. We have 6 minutes. Ronnie Alcalay, Bill Greenslade, to be followed by Randy Wahlberger.
Hi, thank you for hearing us. This is my first time in front of the council, and my name is Ronnie Alcalay. I advocate the re-legalization of industrial hemp on the west side of the boardwalk. And I have been there. I have noticed that in the summer months, people can get there very early to reserve a spot. And I have myself been involved in some conflicts over who is where at that early in the morning. And I've also understood that people have been involved in conflicts. However, I just want to make clear to all of you that instituting a lottery, I think, is a very heavy-handed measure to solve a problem that could be solved much easier by looking at the boardwalk and at the role of the people on the west side of the boardwalk as a place where there's a finite amount of space and a lot of demand for that space. If the council would consider something as simple as placing a limit on the amount of space that any particular person could take up, that would free up so much space and solve a lot of the problems of conflict. If people were to just have like 20 feet maximum rather than 40 feet or 50 feet, then I think that would be a much better way of solving this problem than the lottery system. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bill Greenslade, to be followed by Randy Wahlberger.
A while back, the city felt the need for communities to have a say, so they allowed for grassroots councils. In this case, you have a grassroots council that voted unanimously against this, and no one is listening. Where are the representatives? And why is no one listening? Completely 16-0. Please listen.
Thank you. Randy Wahlberger, and our speaker after that will be Peggy Lee Kennedy. Peggy Lee Kennedy will be next after this. Please, Mr. Wahlberger.
Free speech should be free. It shouldn't be regulated, and free speech shouldn't cost $25.
Peggy Lee Kennedy, and then Charles Benson will be next. Charles Benson next.
Hi, my name's Peggy Lee Kennedy, and I'm here speaking for the Free Speech Zone. And as you can see, many of them turned out here, and a lot of them don't have vehicles. And it's really a big deal to come all the way to City Hall for people. They're losing their day's income. I know you guys are being paid. I was also elected in 2003, June, elected to the Neighborhood Council in a landslide neighborhood council election, landslide, one of the biggest turnouts. And I was one of the biggest counts on the votes. And I ran on a simple platform to protect people who were poor or who didn't otherwise have a voice in the community. And that's why I'm here right now, because these people are not getting a voice, and we need to wait until we get an elected city council person that represents Venice. This is... Ruth Galanther fought for the boardwalk, and she knew what the community wanted in that area. You know, nobody can agree completely, but this is a big area. And also I want to say, why is the city even considering that? And you guys are sitting here talking amongst yourself and stuff and not even listening to me, and I put a lot into this. Right. And I don't think that's right, and I'm a neighborhood council person, and I wouldn't do that to you. I put a lot into getting these people here so they could have a voice, because they are the voiceless. And I think you guys need to listen to this, please.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Charles Benson, to be followed by Amaya Matei.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Benson. I'm representing all the religious people at the beach. I've been at the beach since 1978. I came as an artist. I play music over there, and then also sell religious items. I think in America we have Jews, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, all kinds of religion over here in America. So in Venice Beach, we display our art over there. In 1994, we were forced to go and rent a space. I rented a space from Sidewalk Market. The space was about $200 at that time. Now the place costs you about $1,500 selling religious items. It's very hard for anybody selling religious items to go to rent a booth from the people who are renting spaces for the vendors over there. So when this lottery comes, that means we will be forced to go back to Sidewalk Market and all those people that are having booths over there to sell a space. And the space they sell to you in the summertime, you pay about $3,000. In the wintertime, you might pay $1,500, which is very bad for even citizens to charge other citizens that way. So I'm representing the religious people at the beach, and we are asking the city to look into this. If we want to destroy America, it's bad. Religion is one of the basic of all humanity and all over the world. So for you to just bring the lottery, if you bring a lottery and somebody is not able to get a space or win a lottery, that means he's out over there for some time. Then you have to go back to the same landlord to rent a space. Right now the space are renting $800. Summertime it goes to $3,000. So the city should look into that. That's what I have to say.
Thank you very much, Amaya. And this will be our final speaker in the 20 minutes, and I will read everybody's name into the record. Is Amaya Matei here? Amaya Matei. Amaya Matei? Is Amaya here? And this will be our final speaker on this side, unless there's a motion to open up further testimony. We'll go 20 minutes on the other side initially after this. So Amaya, please.
Yeah, let us speak. I came here 1986. Signed by, let us speak. Let us speak. This is on life. You have to hear from
Mr. Labange.
President.
Mr. Labange.
As the chairman of the committee that heard this, where we had over 41 comments, and the fact that these people came so far in the rain, I would like to ask that we have 10 minutes either side, so everybody gets a chance, but that means you got to watch it, so you got to be right to the point so everybody can hear your concerns. Is that
So we
okay?
will, so if there's
Second
no
by Ms.
objection.
Misakowski.
And if there's no objection, that will mean then that both sides will now have 30 minutes. 20 minutes has expired on this. We'll add an additional 10 minutes for this side, starting with Amaya, please.
Thank you. So my line up, and so be ready to go. Thank you very much. Mr. Garcetti.
Before we start the clock, just to keep it efficient, Sheikh Dodd will be next, to be followed by, I think it's Nene McCrary, and then Ms. or Mr. Lord from the Venice Beach resident. Yennefer, excuse me for misreading that. Please, go ahead, Amaya.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Labange. We appreciate your help. We have approximately 2,000 valid petitions here. I need to know who to give them to. We want to present these to the council. Like the banner, these have been signed not only by local people, but people from all over the world. I'm going to keep this very quick. I'm going to hit what I think are the salient points. First of all, the new proposed ordinance, not the old one. Nobody has a problem with that. The new proposed ordinance is unconstitutional, and it will be challenged on that account. Secondly, it's mean-spirited. It will be challenged on that account. And lastly, it's totally against any concept of free speech. And as near as anybody that is working on the free side right now can figure, it is going to be an enforcement nightmare. So that will present a challenge in and of itself. It's going to be much worse to enforce the new one than it is to enforce the existing one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sheikh Dodd, please.
Thank you for giving us the time. I appreciate that. I think that's very nice of you. My name is Dee Dee McCrary. I am the second vice president of Grassroots, Venice Neighborhood Council. I'm the president of Venice 2000 Gang Intervention, and I was a lead captain for the strike, which we were on strike for 4 months. So I know what our people need. They need the help down there, and we need to consider them because they are artists and they need jobs. And I would appreciate it if you give us the time to go over this and think about what we need to do to help the people down on the Broadwalk, because they are human beings and they do need their work and they do need jobs. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Mikowski, members of City Council. I'm Dr. John Michelle, and I go back 3 councils. Pat Russell, who my contract was signed to promote the LIFE program, Love is Feeding Everyone. Of this charge, I am guilty. Gladly so, because part of what this country is about is demonstrations, and we put on positive ones every day in Venice. You're welcome to come to Venice to breathe our fresh air. My protest is a disease that's spreading here and everywhere. Now, we have unemployed electricians, plumbers, carpenters. American skilled labor can't get jobs. Now, this is something that your councils, this past 3 administrations, have disregarded behind cheap labor and cheap parts. Now, I have a petition here with 4,800 signatures documented by the LA Times 4 months ago. I also had a request in to Sandy Kievan and Ms. Mikowski for a bird of paradise for our community garden. The jobs are there, and we have this petition we're submitting for secession. Ms. Mikowski, you will be out of a job until they get 200 more signatures. Thank you.
My name is Diane Butler, and actually, I don't think there's any place for me on the earth that's like Venice Beach. Venice Beach is, I really love Venice Beach. And if you pass this ordinance, you're going to destroy everything that makes Venice the place that I love, because it's the spirit of Venice will be crushed. There's no way a lottery will work and the people will be able to come and express themselves the way they have been. The community there is phenomenal, and you'll crush a community that's individual and different. And this world needs communities like Venice. So please don't crush it.
Good morning. I have come today because after 78 years as a native of Los Angeles, I am astounded that the City Council is going to have to vote on a lottery, on a gamble for free speech,
Ma'am, your name,
on a
please?
gamble for being able to work, to earn money. It's unthinkable, and I ask you all not to do it. Thank you.
Well, good morning. That beautiful lady that just spoke was my mother-in-law, and the lady before was my wife. We're a family that's been there since the late 60s. But I want to first say about this ordinance, number one, I recognize that you all are believers in Jesus, and that this is an anti-life ordinance. Here's a poem that I wrote for you this morning. This is not the ordinance the way of Jesus. If you believe in Jesus and really read the Bible, if you vote for this ordinance, it seems you have missed one part. I like to share this part with you. If Jesus is your master and your Lord, it seems that you should listen up and hear his peaceful voice. Whatever you do to whatever has life, you do unto me, said the Lord. As you sow, so shall you reap. So I say to you, all my brothers and sisters in this city council, to vote for this, before you vote for this ordinance, just ask yourself, what would Jesus do?
Hi, my name's Yannick Lord. I'm a Venice Beach resident. Venice Beach not so long ago was a rundown and dilapidated area. The people that have turned this round with their blood, sweat and tears and turned it into what it is now, into a desirable area, are the very artists standing behind me. This proposition will take away their livelihoods and drive them out of the area that they helped make what it is now. That's all I have to say.
Hello, my name is Veronica Gray, and I'm a beachfront resident. I'm not one of the artists, I'm one of the residents who can still afford to live there. Anyway, we think that you are trying to do this ordinance just to make life so miserable for the artists that they will be eventually driven out and replaced by commercial structures such as Armani Exchanges and Marriott's. Now, Armani Exchange and Marriott, they will not suffer if Venice Beach is left untouched. There's a million other places near Venice Beach that are already commercialized and developed and already a parking nightmare. But if you take away the livelihood of Venice Beach artists, they will suffer. They're not nameless, faceless corporations. So just leave Venice Beach as the heart and soul of California. It gets almost as much foot traffic as Disneyland. And to take it away is to rip out one place that has spirit and community and free speech.
My name is Lydia Ponce, Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council. It's been mentioned this is purely constitutional. Let's leave the unconstitutional gouging of our civil rights to the Patriot Acts 1 and 2. We need to mediate. We need to mediate with the people. We need to mediate through our problems. Give the Venice people the opportunity to work through our problems in our community. Kick off your hard shoes, take off the suits, put on something comfortable, come down, and let's talk.
Thank you. Thank you. This action, this lottery, these regulations are extreme. We
Your name,
need to back up and talk to one another. You are about to fire an elephant gun at a rabbit. You may find that there is nothing attractive left after your actions. Hold a summit, negotiate, mediate, do not regulate.
Yes, indeed. My name is Sheik Dodd. I'm a musician from Venice Beach. And I just want to let you know that right here also I want to say to the officers, thank you for doing the job that you guys have been doing. I also want to say that all of us on the side over here, the vendors, we are the stars of Venice Beach. Without us, you wouldn't be nothing, believe it or not, okay? We're the stars. We're who they come to see. So we as peoples must stick together, both sides, instead of fighting against each other. That's what I come to say because we're the stars.
My name is James Taman. Thank you for letting me be here. This lottery that's about to rear its ugly head, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we are talking about a lottery here. This can put a lot of hard-working, good people out in the streets if we don't have enough, as it is. And very difficult time as it is, who's in God's name is going to be responsible for those who can't come down on Venice Beach after they lost out on this lottery? Well, I would tell you who should be responsible, and that's the ones who want Venice Beach changed with a lottery that can cause more hardships with the restrictions and rules, only adding more and more people out in the streets of Venice, falling prey to night-raiding peoples of thoughts. Do you want to claim this also as a responsibilities, ladies and gentlemen of this committee, and who is of this lottery? I believe not, ladies and gentlemen. At least be responsible for those artists and other talents financially, just until they make it on their own again. Don't you think? I think this is the American way, don't you think?
Thank you very much. This is going to end the 30 minutes of public comment on this side for item 11. I know we've already extended it once. We've had a total of 30 minutes. And I do believe it's now time to hear from those who are here for the proposals.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to turn it back to the President because I understand that. We'll consider that later because Mr. President is in charge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I can ask you all to please take a seat. And now the council will call forward, and if we can reset the clock, Madam Clerk, Joseph Mack, followed by Mark Ryovic, Darrell Dufay, Joel Shields, Marta Every, David Dror, and I'll call additional names as the hearing proceeds. And if you would please form a line behind the podium, that would expedite this public hearing.
Good morning, council members. As a former member of the Grassroots Neighborhood Council's Boardwalk Committee.
Your name, sir?
Joseph Mack, Venice, California. As a former member of the Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council Boardwalk Committee and resident living within 1/2 block of the boardwalk, I have made a concerted effort over the past year to understand the issues which surround the proposed ordinance. I am confident that the proposed revisions to the municipal code will reap positive benefits for all parties which enjoy the Venice Boardwalk and its environs. It is tempting to assume that further controlling free speech on the boardwalk will deny people the opportunity to exercise their First Amendment rights. However, in the case of the boardwalk, it is the lack of governance which has led to a reduction in First Amendment rights for those seeking access to the boardwalk. Case in point, the lack of an orderly system has the potential to discriminate against the elderly, handicapped, single parents, handicapped persons, folks who rely on public transportation. In short, any person who is unable to arrive as early as 5 a.m. to vie for exhibit space may be excluded from their own free speech. I have attended neighborhood council meetings, and the crux of the problem appears to be the lack of space on the boardwalk, which is only exacerbated by the rampant sale of commercially produced goods on the boardwalk. It is not uncommon to see several parties hawking mass-produced goods from overseas sweatshops under the guise of freedom of religious expression. Law enforcement and fellow artists are powerless to clearly define what can and cannot be sold on the boardwalk for fear of legal reprisal. This lack of space means that artists lose their chance at personal expression. Some of the people you have just listened to have been filmed at various neighborhood council meetings complaining about the fact that there are parties on the boardwalk who sell spaces for money. There are also parties on the boardwalk who sell the same item in multiple locations. Obviously, this produces a net loss in available space for the artists as a whole. In addition to the lack of available space Ambiguity in the current ordinance causes numerous physical and verbal altercations as interested parties must literally fight for exhibit space in the pre-dawn hours.
Sir, let me just remind you that the more time you take, the less time there are for other speakers.
I understand, thank you. This requires police intervention at comparatively peaceful hours. Based on the sheer number of visitors to the boardwalk, police resources could be better invested in preserving the safety of crowds at peak hours rather than supervising the behavior of a select few individuals at otherwise peaceful hours of the day. Please support the proposed amendment to LA Municipal Code 4215 so that the Venice Boardwalk can once again be Los Angeles' Jewel by the Sea, a springboard where talented artists from across the city can be discovered and celebrated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Councilman Padilla and members of the City Council. My name is Mark Ryavec, and I live at 453 Rialto Avenue in Venice, California. I've been a Venice resident for 15 years, and I previously served as Executive Director of the Venice Boardwalk Association, which is an organization of restaurateurs, merchants, and property owners on the east side of the boardwalk. However, I'm speaking today as a private citizen. I have distributed to you a letter which goes into these matters in more detail, and I would ask you to take a moment to read it. I'm here today to support the matter before you. Today's debate is not about free speech or the First Amendment. The question is whether commercial vendors can permanently occupy public space to sell whatever products they want. I was involved in the earlier amendment of the Boardwalk Ordinance and was disappointed in the way it turned out. It is too difficult to enforce. It has resulted in large commercial operations staking out permanent vending stalls for products which have little or no expressive content. Under the current reading of the ordinance, I could take a used refrigerator down to Venice Boardwalk, stick a sticker on it that says Jesus saves or God is love, and I would be entitled, under the current enforcement and the current reading of that ordinance, to sell it. You will see examples today of products where someone has simply done that. They have taken a scarf from India or from Taiwan or from Thailand and put a stamp on it that simply says God is love, and they currently are being allowed to sell that, and they compete straight up against the folks on the east side. The proposal before you allows everyone to use this soapbox by the sea, including the residents of your district who don't have time to get up and be there at 5 o'clock in the morning to be able to fight for a space. It will allow artists to present their creations. Finally, activists, like many of those who you saw today, will still be able to display their signs and hand out their literature permit-free. No permit will be required for anyone to go down there and hand out their literature. They just simply will not be able to automatically command a space on the west side of the boardwalk. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Misakowski for sticking with this for so long. I'd also like to thank the City Attorney's long efforts on this matter. Thank you for your consideration of my thoughts.
My name is Darrell Dufay. Thank you, Mr. President and members of the City Council. This amendment to an existing ordinance is about fairness and equity. Free speech is not being taken away, it's being taken care of. It's there, it's in the ordinance. Anybody can come down to Venice and talk and say what they want to say. But what this is about is an ordinance to give freedom from intimidation, coercion, bullyism, and chaos. At the present time, as has been related, people have to get there at 5 o'clock in the morning. The police resources are there to try to ameliorate the conflicts between vendors. It has been also reported from the city attorney's office that there are 6 restraining orders from vendor to vendor. And what has happened over a period of time, because as you know, this amendment has been worked on for 3 years. It didn't happen yesterday, it's 3 years. And what we're trying to do is bring equity. There's 1,500 feet of space on the west side. And the amendment of the ordinance says, let's provide 20 feet for performers and 10 feet for those other people that wish to be there. Whatever they want to be there. I just would suggest to you that all of what has gone on, and no one mentioned it up until the last few speakers, that it is equity and it is fairness. And a lottery is fair. It doesn't guarantee you a space on the west side, but it's public property, and I don't know that anybody is guaranteed a place there. So I would urge your support of this for something that free speech still is there, and equity and fairness would be promoted by your yes vote. Thank you very much.
I have Joel Shields, followed by Marta Every, David Dror, Steve Human, Deborah Michael, Kay Brisky. Go ahead.
President Padilla, council members, I am one of the other 2 people who evidently live on the boardwalk. I've been a resident on the boardwalk for the past 14, 15 years.
Your name, sir?
Joel Shields. Up until the last 2 or 3 years, we've had really no problems down there. It's the last 4 or 5 years that the vending situation has gotten out of hand. What we have now are vendors arriving as early as 5 o'clock in the morning, fighting for space, waking up residents, including myself, requiring a lot of use of the LAPD. I see the LAPD out on the weekend on a regular basis. There are restraining orders going on. There are vendors taking in excess of 30, 40 feet of space to sell their wares. We heard talk about manufactured items. I have a silk scarf here that was imported from Taiwan that has a little tiny stamp that says God is love. And this scarf now is a protected item. I don't know exactly what the best solution is. I'm not in favor of any regulation that's not necessary, but there are big problems down there. I know that Cindy's office, Sandy, LAPD, Parks and Rec have all worked very hard to find something they think is fair and balanced. I would simply encourage you to take a look at the problems down there and acknowledge the fact that there are problems and find a good solution. Thank you.
My name is Marta Every, and I live at 758 Palms Boulevard. I am a Venice stakeholder. Honorable council members, members of the Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council have stood before you purporting to represent the 40,000 stakeholders that make up Venice. I am here to respectfully tell you that this is not necessarily the case. As one of the 39,604 Venetians who did not vote for the so-called progressive slate supermajority that now dominates our neighborhood council, nor participated in their unsanctioned election, I would like to remind the City Council that GRVNC is currently under investigation by the Human Relations Commission because of serious and substantial election challenges brought against GRVNC by its own stakeholders. These challenges are in fact so serious that the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment suspended GRVNC's funding for 2 months before the city attorney could even determine if the neighborhood council had a legal quorum to operate. More importantly, I'm here to tell you that this neighborhood council no longer represents the will of most of the people it claims to represent. GRVNC board member Eleanor Arthur expressed the attitude of the board quite effectively when she wrote to the Argonaut newspaper stating in part, and I quote, "The board is there to provide access to City Hall for the homeless, the renters, boardwalk artists, and others. This is what the neighborhood councils were created for. There are other people in Venice who disagree. They think they should be the only ones to have access to City Hall, although they have plenty of access now. As one of those other people who did not get on the bus that was provided for protesters of this ordinance, I wonder what kind of access I am getting from my neighborhood council. So, folks, in other words, if you don't fit the board's definition of a stakeholder, the board's claims to the contrary, GRVNC simply does not represent you. For these reasons, I ask you to keep this in mind as you consider the community impact statement and the testimony provided by GRVNC and its board members today. Honorable council members, please do not be fooled. This issue about the boardwalk ordinance is not about free speech. It's about real estate, who controls it and who is profiting from it. Free speech should be free for all, not just a select few who are willing to bully and intimidate the competition into submission. I support Cindy Miskowski's efforts in this regard, and I urge all the council members to do the same. Thank you.
Council members and honored guests, my name is David Rowe. I live in Venice, and I've been involved in this process for nearly 25 years, and I keep hearing mediation, mediation, mediation. However, luckily the last few weeks, I also hear about an underground economy. Just think of it, 250 people are sitting there on the west side of the boardwalk, making a living. That is an underground economy, and nothing is being done about it. We are not here to stop the artists or the entertainers, but we are here to stop the vending of purchased merchandise. And there is no reason in the world for us to play any games about it. It's big business over there. In addition, they are taking away the spaces that are designed, the benches and spaces for the handicapped, for the elderly. Every square inch of property is being occupied for illegal purposes. It is not the vendors. It is not the free speech people that we are after over here. Thanks to our councilwoman and the district attorney, finally we are getting a law that has passed in San Diego, in Hawaii, and other places. And the courts have ruled that it is legal to have those laws. Please, please consider it. We are talking about hundreds of people over there. We do need it. The time for it is now, and please help us by passing that law. Thank you.
Good morning, council members. My name is Steve Heumann. I don't think there's anybody on either side of this issue who doesn't love art, support artists, believe in free speech. But there are problems out there. My company, the one that I work for, owns some property. We have open-air merchants on the east side of the boardwalk. We charge $25,000, $35,000 a year in rent for 10 feet of frontage along the boardwalk. There are merchants there are people with for-profit businesses on the west side, the free public side of the boardwalk, with 20, 30, 40, 50 feet of frontage on the boardwalk. They're not paying rent like my merchants do. They are not required to have a fire extinguisher like my merchants are. They are not required to have a fireproof tarp. Many of them are using canopies made of sheets. I do not think that they're paying taxes. My vendors have city business tax. It's just unfair competition. It's for-profit businesses under the guise of we should be able to do this because we have the right to free speech. I hope nobody believes in that. Also, we have a number of problems out there with fighting over space, extortion money to reserve spaces. People's views are blocked. The police are stuck. They can't spend all their time on this annoying issue, and yet it gets complicated sometimes. I really appreciate the city's hard work on this. I know that Ruth Galaner worked very hard on this because I worked on it with her for many, many, many years. And I believe that Ruth's intention is being furthered by what Cindy Mizikowski and the City Attorney's Office are doing. I think that many of the people are happy with the ordinance as it stands because I don't think the ordinance is properly being enforced currently because the police have no vehicle to enforce it with. That's what I think this permit system will do and the ordinance change. I urge you all to support it unanimously. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christine Inman. I guess I just changed my mind. I first wanted to say thank you about the trauma centers for fighting for them. That's brilliant. You know, we took schools, we took out the art, we took out the music. You're right. Who needs it? Don't need it on the boardwalk. You'll find it in front of City Hall. You'll find, you know, if you want us to have the sun under 4 feet of shade, you know, that's okay. You know, I think you're right. I think you don't want 300 artists. It goes all the way to El Segundo. We don't go all the way to El Segundo. I think you're right. I think this ordinance is beautiful. I think the Patriot Act is great. I think George Bush is wonderful. And I thank you.
Let me read a few more names and restock the queue. Marta Every, David Dror, can't see if it's Deborah Mitchell from Vista, Kay Brisky, Jay Goodfather, Michael Folkert, Eileen Erickson, Derek Lemkin, and David Straighton. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Kay Brisky, Mr. President, council members. I'm Executive Director of the Venice Boardwalk Association, and I would like to underscore what most of the people said before me. As you know, we have millions of visitors coming to Venice Beach and Boardwalk annually, and many from other countries. They come to Venice Beach to see the art, the entertainers, and the free expression. They don't come to see a swap meet, and there definitely needs to be better regulation. Okay. As you know, and as you heard from the previous speakers, people are fighting over space to sell items on a public right-of-way, many items that are directly in competition with the merchants on the east side who do pay rent and taxes. And
Excuse me, could you make the clock go again? Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. I was making up for the time that the previous speaker had made. Go ahead.
okay, if I can proceed. We do urge your support of this ordinance. There definitely needs to be regulation. I just urge that you support this proposed draft ordinance so that we will have a balance of entertainers, artists, and free speech, public expression. I'd like to commend Councilmember Mizikowski and her staff and the City Attorney's staff for the hard work they put into this ordinance, and I think this will provide a safe and very entertaining, exciting boardwalk. Thank you.
My name is Jay Goodfader. My family started the Sidewalk Cafe in 1976. I grew up in Venice, and I've lived there for 13 years after college. I have 40 tenants who rent from me in various spots for vending space. I think that no one is against artists and entertainers. They're against merchandise on that side. I don't think the artists who came here and spoke so eloquently understand the damage that not maybe they have not done, but that their compatriots who are allowed to sell right next to them, selling merchandise identical to the stuff that some of my tenants sell. The numbers of small businesses, small families this has hurt over the last 10, 15 years is immense. So I think you should understand that it's not big business, it's not a conspiracy. This is hurting real people, and the longer we wait, the more it hurts real people. Thank you.
Good day. My name is Mike Folkert. I'm a merchant on the east side of Venice Beach. I have a shop there for over 12 years, and I represent the Venice Beach Merchants Association. We've been trying to get the city to enforce some type of regulation against other businesses selling on the west side of the boardwalk for over 10 years. When I first came to Venice Beach, it was artists, entertainers, a lot of the people you saw here today, and free speech people. Then after a few incidents of lawsuits and what have you, it just got to be a free-for-all. Back in those days, back in like 89, 90, there were numerous entertainers performing on the boardwalk. Those people were the stars of Venice Beach. Those people were the ones that people came from all around the world to see perform and entertain. And that's got pushed away by people that just want to sell merchandise. I've seen numerous people that were merchants on our side of the boardwalk that had a space for rent that today they no longer have to pay rent. They just go over to the other side and sell their goods. And it's not fair to the other businesses. As far as suffering goes and people being put out of work, I employ 6 people in my business. That's not a lot, but now I'm down to 3 employees. So if the economy was a little better, if I had more activity at my business, less competition from the other side, I'd be able to hire a few more people to work in my shop. The ordinance also has other benefits as far as bringing entertainers back to the boardwalk, giving them allocated spaces to set up and perform in, and it also frees up space for people to get to a trash can on the other side if they want to throw a piece of trash in a can. Right now it's a complete wall of merchants. You can't even walk from the east side to the west side of the boardwalk without going like a quarter mile down to find a bathroom or something where you can cut through. So maybe the ideas are not perfect, but I don't think any idea is. And you know, I'm a survivor. I've been there for almost 15 years, and I'll keep doing whatever it takes to be at Venice Beach and have a business there and keep it going and provide a service for the thousands, millions of people that come to Venice Beach every year. I sell Native American arts and crafts. You know, people come from all over the world to see the things that we provide, that is the culture of America. And I think anybody from the other side that's a survivor will be able to maintain as well, even with this current ordinance. It's not stopping anybody from doing anything. It's just trying to limit some of the problems that we have going on today. Thanks again.
Good morning. I'm Eileen Pollock Erickson. I was born in Venice and have lived there most of my life. I represent the Venice Preservation Committee, which is a neighborhood group, and I would like to very much thank Councilwoman Mizikowski and her staff and the City Attorney's Office for listening not only to the Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council, whose legitimacy is under challenge, whose support in the community is small, but also to the many other neighborhood groups and individuals. This proposed lottery is fair. It has proven successful in other beach communities. It will increase public access. It will be inclusive of all people, not just the few entrenched vendors who in many cases have monopolized spaces on the free side and threaten new artists and speakers who would like to have an opportunity to present their art on the boardwalk. The permit fee of $25 is not an annual but a lifetime permit fee. Thank you for your consideration and support of this ordinance.
My name is Derek Lampkin. I'm a resident of Venice for the last 5 years, also grew up in Los Angeles. The reason that I support this ordinance is because it forces artists to move. I live on a street where every weekend I'm a full-time student. On the weekends I need to do work at home. I need to sit in my front yard, which I spend time with my wife making look nice. And when I sit outside for every single day of the last summer, I've listened to the same band and the same group of people play the same songs from about 10 in the morning until about 4 in the afternoon. I completely support all the local Venice artists. It's the reason that I live there. I've called the police to complain about it and was told that there was nothing they could do. This ordinance would allow the police to say, please just move somewhere else. Your time is up at this spot. Now you may move somewhere else. There are a few spaces on the boardwalk that are prime real estate for these vendors and these artists, and they should not be able to use their, what people have called their power and numbers to dominate certain areas so that the local residents are stuck with no recourse to just get people to move around so that I can change the station on the radio on the weekends. That's it. That's why I support this ordinance. Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Straighton, and I'm a resident of Venice. And I support artists and I support artistic diversity. I'm an artist myself. I'm a filmmaker. And our biggest challenge as residents is amplified music, amplified speaking through an amplifier. I support free speech, but when there's a performance or a speech that's permeating my home, and I don't have a choice to turn it off, that's a violation of my freedom. And I just want to remind everyone that freedom doesn't mean a freedom from responsibility. Thank you.
All right, my name is Turner, Willie Lee Turner, but spiritually they call me Solomon. Good evening, City Council. This is a serious issue with the Constitution of the United States, the rights for citizens all over the world. If we want to show that we want to put democracy in other countries, and we're taking free speech away, and for people that live in Venice, and if you move to one of the busiest tourist spots in the world, and you want to sit home and listen to your radio, you should have moved somewhere else. This is Venice Beach. This is a place where people come from all over the world to, listen to entertainment, to express themselves, and they need an outdoor seashell stage by the beach where artists and performers can get up there. That way they don't have to play their music on the boardwalk. They can have like a Hollywood Bowl type thing. That's what we need, and that'll take the sound away. And another thing, the rotation of the artists and the lottery. See, people come from all over the world. They come from Germany, France. They may just want to be there for 3 days. And so if you're going to stop the flow of all this beautiful information and art that could come at any time, and the only thing that should be regulated should be spaces for people. Everyone should have just a certain amount of space. And a $25 fee, we'll pay that to perform. I mean, if that's what it takes. And that's it. But far as telling people, it's gonna, because if Park and Recreations, if they have the decisions, and they can't even, they're barely putting basketball nets, if they're gonna be over artists, and if they don't like you, if they have personal things against, they're gonna blank people out. So this is,
thank you.
With Bush, this is our, it has something to do with the Constitution of the United States. And this is the last spot of freedom. They took Bologna Creek, and they're trying to take Venice. So.
Thank you very much. This is going to conclude public comment for this item. Oh, I understand that very clearly. Thank you very much. Both sides have had their time. We thank you all for being here. We're now going to proceed with the council discussion and debate on this issue. Let me first turn to Ms. Misikowski, who represents the district.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to invite up to the table the representatives of the City Attorney, Recreation and Parks, and I would like to ask some of the senior lead officers and the folks who are here from the Pacific Division who patrol and have handled some of these issues. Members, I'm going to ask the City Attorney to present what this is, but there were some statements that were misstatements. And in fact, there were some statements of what people said ought to be that in fact are embodied in this ordinance. There also was a misstatement that this started with the issue with my coming into the Venice community, and that is not true. The issue started literally with the issues had been there in the boardwalk, but they were the first issue that the neighborhood prosecutor for the Venice community that was there when Ruth Galanter was in office tried to address. We talk about meetings, we talk about input, and we talk about mediation. Since the beginning of 2002, when this was in Councilwoman Galanter's district, the city attorney with the police department called together people who had stakeholder interest on the boardwalk, both the vendors, the artists, those on the east side of the street, and the residents, trying to address the problem. The issue and the recommendation for a permit actually came from an artist at one of those meetings. And what you have seen, and I think you had some testimony to that, is that some of the artists and performers have been intimidated out of the boardwalk. There have been altercations, there has been physical violence, and I think the officers will speak to that. You heard today that there are among a number of artists restraining orders keeping them from each other, and I don't know that I would call them artists. They are part of the community that has encroached into what should be free speech with this vending opportunity. As a consequence of multiple meetings, including meetings with the as I said, led by the city attorney's office and also led essentially by my office when I came into this by Sandy Kievman. Many of the artists, many of the vendors, many of the people who have protested have been part of those meetings in my office, with me, and with the entities that are at the table. There was a neighborhood council committee trying to deal with this issue. And that neighborhood council committee, when people tried to speak and say, well, what about something else? How about some fairness? They were shut out. Those people who wanted to present to the neighborhood council committee opportunities were accused of racism, were accused of a lot of other things just in trying to help achieve something. Our city attorney went to other cities, other beachfront communities where there were also free speech issues, where there were concerns expressed, and found what they believe is a model ordinance. And at this time, I would like to ask the city attorney and those at the front table to present their picture of how they came to this issue to help try to modify and modulate the existing ordinance. And I will say, members, I don't know that there's anyone else around the horseshoe who was here when 4215 came in. I believe it was in the 80s. Many of the people who were in the audience protesting this one protested that one. Change is sometimes difficult, but I think balance and an opportunity for more people who want to be part of that boardwalk space. We have perhaps 300 people who want to be there in spaces that can fit for 100. And what we have are those who have asserted their rights, are there by intimidation, and don't allow some of the others to have access. I'm happy, when I push my button again, to speak on the issues of bringing the neighborhood council in terms of reviewing the lottery, in viewing the process, and making changes. In fact, there's one change the city attorney is going to be making today that was brought about as a consequence of the people in the audience, and that was to allow something higher than 4 feet as a structure to create shade for them. That is something the city attorney will address and is now incorporated in the ordinance. But at this time, I'd like to ask the city attorney, Recon Park, and the police department to present the ordinance and how it came about.
Good morning, council members. I'm Mark Brown, Senior Assistant City Attorney. For many years, Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 4215 has prohibited commercial vending on the western beach side of the Venice Boardwalk. However, selling or accepting donations for items or performances protected by the First Amendment is expressly permitted. As you know, the Venice Boardwalk is one of the most heavily visited attractions in Southern California. Due to the extremely large crowds, particularly during the warm weather season, problems have persisted on the boardwalk despite the police department's and Recon Park's department's best efforts to enforce Section 4215. These problems involve all stakeholders, including the artists, performers, and others who wish to use the boardwalk for legal free expression purposes, but have been prevented from doing so by illegal commercial vendors or overly aggressive persons who take up an excessive amount of space and physically threaten others to maintain their claimed spaces. Incidents of pre-dawn setup, loud arguments, and displacement of others by physical intimidation and force have been reported by the police department and by others wishing to engage in legitimate free expression. Illegal vending has been complained of by business owners operating on private property on the east side of the boardwalk. Excessive, ear-splitting noise has been complained of by nearby residents. And emergency, life safety, and law enforcement ingress and egress has been restricted by unregulated activity, as has the pure enjoyment by the public of pedestrian and visual access to the beach adjacent to the boardwalk. Approximately a year and a half ago, the council member brought together a working group consisting of Recreation and Parks, the police department, city attorney, and her staff to look at how enforcement of Section 4215 could be improved. The proposed changes included in the draft ordinance and the public expression permit rules adopted by the Board of Recreation and Park Commissioners in October 2003 and amended in April 2004 represent the best thinking of that working group to bring some order to the chaos that has been occurring on the boardwalk for many, many years by balancing the needs of all boardwalk stakeholders and regulating the time, place, and manner of the legitimate legal First Amendment protected speech and activities that occur there without regard to the content. The purpose of the draft ordinance is to amend Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 4215 to regulate the activities that are currently permitted on the boardwalk by, one, requiring a permit from the Department of Recreation and Parks to use an assigned space, and two, establishing enforceable time, place, and manner regulations on the use of the designated spaces. The Board of Recreation and Park Commissioners has established rules governing assignment and use of spaces. There will be 62 spaces, 10 feet by 8 feet, for general use, and 44 spaces, 20 feet by 8 feet, for performers. Operating the program, and to an extent enforcement of the rules, will be an administrative matter handled by Recreation and Park staff. Consequences of violating an administrative rule will range between a warning for a first offense to permit revocation for a third offense. However, violating some of the rules, such as selling or accepting donations for First Amendment protected items or performances without a permit, occupying a space after sunset and prior to 9 a.m., conducting otherwise protected activity outside of the designated boundaries, and some others also violate the ordinance. And violations of the ordinance would be enforced by the police department and would constitute misdemeanor offenses. The rules adopted by the Board of Recreation and Park Commissioners are flexible and can be adjusted by the Recreation and Parks Commission to meet changing needs. An example is that when it was pointed out that the limitation on placing items over 4 feet tall in the permitted spaces would preclude the use of beach umbrellas and sunshades, an express exception was made for that purpose. And it's my understanding that the draft ordinance may be amended today to allow for that exception. Anyone who pays a $25 fee to obtain a permit may enter into a monthly lottery to obtain a general use space or performer space. The permit does not give the right to engage in any activity prohibited by Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 4215. Only persons with permits can occupy spaces to personally exercise their First Amendment rights. The permits are not transferable. The draft ordinance contains rights of appeal of administrative violations of the rules and permit revocations. Violations of the ordinance, again, are punishable as misdemeanors.
Hi, I'm Teresa Skinner. I'm the senior lead officer in the Venice Beach area. Some of the things that the police are concerned about are the calls for service, the amount of citizen complaints, and the amount of officers needed on an overtime basis to control some of the problems that we have in the morning. The calls for service include people showing up at about 5 in the morning. They start unloading their vehicles. They're dropping their aluminum poles on the ground, unloading their chairs. The residents are trying to sleep. At 9 o'clock, when they are allowed to set up on the west side, now it's a mad dash for the west side from the east side with all their stuff. This creates somewhat of a little chaos. We've had calls for batteries. We've had calls for, fights that are in progress. We've had the residents getting into it with the west side vendors because of the noise. On a general basis between Easter and Labor Day, we deploy 2 to 4 beach detail officers on an overtime basis to come in 4 hours prior to their shift to create the calls for service, to prevent the calls for service. And then at night, the park closes at 10:30, so currently the vendors are allowed to be there till 10:30, and this creates also a problem with the noise and the residents, and so we hold officers over for 2 to 3 hours after their shift, creating another incident of overtime for officers. The thing that the ordinance is going to really help us with is preventing the fights, preventing the noise complaints amongst the vendors, amongst the residents, preventing from having the officers come in early, preventing from having the officers have to stay over. We're not trying to suppress anybody's expression. They're allowed to come out there and express themselves as much as they want in their space. We're not trying to suppress that. We have some of the most talented artists in Venice, and this will give everybody an opportunity to join in the lottery and express themselves, and not the same artists every week. We want to keep Venice, Venice. We don't want it to be, a commercial state like some people think it might become. We want the artists there, and we want the expression there.
Good morning, council members. My name is Kevin Regan. I'm Superintendent of Recreation and Parks. The Department of Recreation and Parks will be administering this program, and we have a number of concerns of what's going on currently on the boardwalk on the western side. The west side of Venice Boardwalk is under the jurisdiction of the Department of Recreation and Parks. And you've heard not only in the public comments and the testimony, but you've also heard from the LAPD that there are a number of problems. Some of those problems are the fighting that's going on, the strong arm tactics that's going on over the jockeying for space, and the amount of space that the individual vendors, artists are taking up. What we believe in the Department of Recreation and Parks is that the boardwalk should be there. It should be there for all, for anyone who wants to come and anyone who would like to take part in the lottery system. We believe that this ordinance and this program administered by the Department of Recreation and Parks will actually create more space, because the spaces will be identified and there will be an orderly process by which performers, artists, and people who wish to speak out for free speech can get these spaces. One thing I'd like to point out is that the free speech is really not the issue here. Anyone that wants to come to Venice and speak out under their free speech rights can do so. What this really does is it gives a permit, just like we would to anyone else who would come to a public park and request a specific area for exclusive use. That happens across the city in other parks. If a person would come in and want specific exclusive use of a piece of a public park, we would issue a permit. That's exactly what we're doing here. One last thing I'd like to say is that one of the problems that we're experiencing now is the access to things like the picnic tables, the benches, the trash cans that are right now almost inaccessible because they're just covered with these vendor spaces. It's our intent to actually provide more space for these individuals to do the performance, to display their art in an orderly, safe manner, and we believe that, and we're committed to that, and we believe it's going to be a very good program for the residents and for all.
I'd like to thank the members of the various agencies who are here. Members, this has gone to and been approved twice by the Recreation and Parks Commission. It has gone to the Police Commission and been approved. Mr. Labange, as he indicated, held Arts, Health, and Humanity Committee and had a session and a hearing on it. And besides that, there were a large number of meetings dating back to 2002 that were held in the Venice community, at the Venice Library, with the vendors, with the stakeholders, some in the large sessions, some in the smaller sessions, and I have a large file, and I know that a number of you have heard about it. Two things I want to make clear. We are doing two things today. We are passing an ordinance and a set of guidelines or rules. The ordinance essentially sets the basic framework, and I would like to verbally amend the ordinance to include, as Mr. Brown indicated, as was indicated in terms of what kind of structures people can bring or use or erect on the boardwalk. We had limited it to a 4 foot in height. Recognizing this is Venice, recognizing that in the summertime you want people to have some shade, the city attorney has prepared an amendment for the ordinance that I will verbally make today to allow the erection of either sunshades, sun umbrellas, etc., as long as they don't have sides and in a full enclosure, but at least the shade. Secondly, the part of the ordinance that is the guidelines or the rules in terms of the lottery, in terms of the issues and how they will be enforced, and the ability to have an appeal, which is in the both the ordinance and the guidelines. The rules and the guidelines we can look at. There's flexibility there. I would very much be willing to invite the Association of Artists and Vendors and the Neighborhood Council to participate with us and the department to try this out, see what happens. Should we, after a period of time, weight the lottery a little bit more one side or the other in terms of seeing how we're experiencing it? Are we really going to have the 300 people apply for 100 spaces? We don't know, but let's get it started. There's flexibility in the rules to make it more adjustable, to make it work there. But I think as what you've heard, we need changes in the rules today. The ordinance as it exists today has not been easily enforceable, and or its enforcement costs us undue time and energy on the part of very valuable LAPD resources. So I think this makes sense. It is a beginning. I think, as you know, we've now brought it in at the fall, so this can go into effect now in the wintertime when it's not the highest use period. It's not the heavy volumes. Let's get our act together. Let's try it. Let's initiate it. And by the time we're in the full flow of summer, I think we will have had whatever adjustments we need to have, but we'll have people understanding it and working with it. And again, it's a workable, flexible program so that we don't have to come back and change the ordinance if we want to just change the guidelines and the rules so that there is a better sense of dispersal, usability, and accessibility. Again, this is not meant to protect a few. This is meant to be allowing anybody. Free speech is free for everyone, and it doesn't mean that there are some people who have a right to this. Interestingly, when we looked at the first meeting with about 70, 80 vendors, the vast majority didn't come from Venice. They really did come from all over the city, which I think is a good thing. We want to continue to encourage that, and that's why I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. I have Mr. Zain next, followed by Mr. Villaraigosa and Mr. Labange.
Thank you, Mr. President. Crime reports. Has those been run, number of crime reports in that area? Are they making crime reports for the incidents that take place?
Amongst the vendors, yes.
A number of crime reports?
Yes.
The violence against officers, has that been a factor involved in this confrontation with officers in a aggressive fashion?
Yes.
Assault on officers?
I wouldn't say so much assaults against officers, but we've had a few resisting arrests, batteries on police officers.
The group that, I must comment on this, in my tenure here, almost 4 years, we've had a lot of debates, a lot of issues, and I've never seen a group turn their back on a council member who's addressing a particular issue, and I noticed that with this group. And what that tells me, you talk about respect, you talk about freedom, you talk about liberty, The council member worked very, very hard on this, along with the members of the Police Department, Recs and Parks. And perception is reality. And when you folks stood up and turned your back on Councilmember Mizikowski, that showed lack of respect, a total lack of respect. We're here to listen to this. We're here to make a decision regarding this particular area in a very civil fashion. And I thought that your actions were outrageous, absolutely outrageous. I will be a strong supporter of this measure. And for the members of the LAPD, you've tolerated the activities in a negative fashion for too long a time. Hopefully this will bring about some solution to make your job a lot easier.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Villaraigosa.
In the last, I guess, 6 weeks or so, I've been on the other end of 2 issues in the 11th Council District, both losing, I may add. One of them was the airport, and the other one was Playa Vista. And I was, because I said then that those were 2 issues that are regional issues and not just district issues. And whenever we're confronted with what is primarily a district issue, I give great weight to the council member in that district. But I do have a few questions for you. One is the question of mediation that was raised, and I understand in the first, if we could hold the applause, thank you. I understand that in the initial process there was a lawsuit that was initiated by folks against the city. We lost the lawsuit. As a result of that, there was a formal mediation process that had occurred. What if any attempts have been made to kind of engage in a mediation process here to try to see if there is a way to coexist without the ordinance? That's my first question.
You want to answer that?
Maybe it's for the city attorney.
It is. That's the city attorney.
I'm not aware of any specific mediation efforts. There have been many community meetings. There have been many public hearings on the ordinance and on the issue in general.
Is it possible, for instance, in the time between now that we are drafting the ordinance and the ordinance is drafted, the 45 days or so, that we could maybe engage in a mediation process?
One of the issues that, and unfortunately, just because of the timing of this date, the neighborhood prosecutor, Mrs. Gita Isagolian, who has been the lead person putting this together, has been trying to play that role, and she has been at many, many, many meetings, as well as my staff and many of the people in the audience on all sides. As I said, I think one of the most disheartening attempts was when we had the meeting of the Boardwalk Committee, subcommittee of the Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council, who indicated to people that they did not have a right to speak if they opposed the artists and the vendors and any attempt to try to create the ordinance together. So that left the ability to mediate, at least through the Grassroots Venice at that time, difficult. What I am offering instead today, and this is not a draft of an ordinance, I believe the ordinance is before us for presentation and an adoption today, but again, as part of the rules, I will ask that the Grassroots Venice Neighborhood Council be a part of the overseeing and participation and review, and come back in 6 months with the department and the staff as to how the rules have been working, whether or not they need to be changed, because in fact it may be that just because of the fluke of a lottery, someone always is picked and someone always is not picked. And maybe we want to weight the lottery a little bit in terms of just showing a little bit more fairness so that you get the rotation and opportunity, but until we really see how many people sign up for it, et cetera. So I think mediation can be a part of the process as we go forward, but I think the rules and the guidelines and the parameters that we're setting forward need to be addressed today, and that's what the ordinance is about.
So if a mediation were to be engaged in, could that have the effect of amending in any way the ordinance?
If need be. I don't think the ordinance is as much the problem, because we have heard people say a permit is fine. There's questions about the lottery and perhaps question of space, but that is how we will define, as it's being implemented, and Rec and Parks and the Police Department and the City Attorney look at it to see whether or not we need modification. Rules and guidelines are more easily modified without a full ordinance change.
The second question I have, what, as I understand it, and this was the courts, I guess, that defined free speech activities as nonprofits engaging in the sale of handicrafts, for instance, nonprofits and religious organizations engage in that kind of activity. Was there a way to bifurcate, is there a way to bifurcate this ordinance so that it doesn't apply to performers and just applies to what would otherwise be commercial activities, except that it's engaged in by nonprofits or religious organizations? And this is to the city attorney, because
the ordinance already provides an exception for expressing a message and accepting donations or selling product that contains that message, and that's has nothing to do with nonprofit status. That has to do with the conveyance of a message in exchange for either an item or for a performance. So
if that's true, then why did so many performers come up today saying that as a result of this new ordinance, they would not be allowed to perform without participating in a permitting process and a lottery process?
Right. They would need to, if they wanted to reserve a space to perform, they would need to obtain a permit.
And so my question to you is there a way to bifurcate out of the ordinance the performers, who I think we're most concerned about, and someone, for instance, I was heard some testimony, maybe it was outrageous, but someone made the argument that you could sell a refrigerator and say Jesus saves and be able to engage in that kind of activity. I assume they were just speaking for the purpose of engaging in some hyperbole, and making an argument. But is there a way to separate performers out from this ordinance and just include the other activity, which is otherwise commercial, except that it's protected by speech because it's religious organizations and nonprofits?
The ordinance applies right now to all free speech activities, including the spoken or the singing or any kind of means of expression. So they're all treated the same under this. Performers are a different category of speaker, but all speakers would be treated the same under
I guess my point is, would there be something, would we, by bifurcating or separating out the performers, would that be somehow violative of the Constitution because we were picking one speech over another? What was the rationale, I guess, to include performers here, where I think the strongest case could be made that that's what Venice is all about?
Right. I think the issue is not whether they can perform. They would be able to perform.
I understand.
The issue is.
Maybe you could help me, Ms. Misikowski, because you're always
I think the question, and what Mr. Rigosa is asking, can we discriminate between types of speech? In other words, is a performer's speech of a different nature and to be allowed more freely versus a general use person who wants space there to espouse a religious point of view or something else? And as I've understood it, we have to treat it all not content neutral, so you can't treat type. That's why they all have been, under the current ordinance, considered as one, and this considers this as one, although we're trying to create different spatial opportunities for performers who might just need a little more space as they're doing that performance.
Well, thank you. And thank you for clarifying that, because she did that very well. I thought I was speaking in a way that you could understand. I mean, I guess my point is here, I understand that we could have time, place, and manner restrictions on free speech.
Right.
I understand that. I did have a basic course in that area of the law. What I'm trying to determine, is there a way and to separate out somehow performers, or would that be, as she says, as Ms. Misikowski says, violated the Constitution because it would be discriminating on content?
I don't think it would address content, and yes, I think
So the answer is we could have separated out.
Yes, you could, I believe, separate performers from other types of expressions in terms of regulation. Yes, you could, if you could define performers in a way that made it very clear what that category was and why there was a distinction. Yes.
So I guess my last question is, would that mean then that in the course of implementing this ordinance, you know, the doomsday that we heard here referred to, if this would have a chilling effect on performers and the kind of ambience of art and culture that we have there, could we revisit this issue? Because for me, that's what resonates the most. I understand that some people have been able to, you know, to be able to sell their wares here, you know, making an argument that there's somehow chilling free speech when we curtail them selling their wares under different auspices, you know, nonprofits, religious organizations. What I'm concerned about are the artists, you know, the people that, and the, so if there's a way for us to revisit that issue, I, of course, as I said earlier, would give respect to the council members who worked on this for 3 years. I do think, though, that this is a matter that we should revisit after a period of time to see if, in fact, we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater here, and in our attempt to kind of balance out, because there are balances here. We've heard a lot of testimony about, you know, the impacts on noise and the conflict and the fighting. I would hope that we would look at that as we review this in the near future.
Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Mr. Reagan, the Assistant General Manager for Recreation and Parks, to explain the diagram of the map so we're clear on everything? If
Sure.
you could be so kind. Are those your maps or the police department maps?
No, these are Rec and Parks maps.
Okay.
And what we're depicting here, council members,
And the public, if you could share that as well.
is essentially, yeah, and public can look on this.
Maybe the officer
The
could
diagrams
point-
are exactly
point
the
if you
same.
could, as he described.
It's also up on the monitors, Mr. Labange.
Essentially, what we're depicting here is the Venice Boardwalk area from Navy Way to 17th Street. And we're showing with the kind of colored triangles that you can see along the diagram. That depicts the west side of the boardwalk, and that shows the different spaces that were going to be allotted for the free speech activities as well as for performers. Some of the spaces will be dedicated for performance, and some of the spaces will be dedicated for other free speech activities. The free speech general purpose, we're kind of calling general purpose spaces, are smaller spaces. They're essentially 10 feet by 8 feet, and the performance spaces are larger. They're 20 feet by 8 feet. And there's a couple of areas that we've avoided. In particular, there's a senior citizen center right here between Navy and Ozone, and we don't have any spaces there, particularly because we're trying to avoid that area to give the senior citizens better access and a little bit more quiet. We're also avoiding this area right here by the famous Muscle Beach of Venice, because that portion of the boardwalk really gets much narrower, and it's very difficult to have any vending on the west side there. So if you had any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No, I think that was a very good explanation. And I also think what Officer Teresa Skinner was speaking about earlier in her testimony was extremely important as they try to relate it. Kevin, I just want to ask you a question, because I met with the general manager yesterday on issues citywide, parks, and rangers. Who was assigned from your department in this area? Who was the city's representative? Because Rec and Parks has it from the boardwalk to the bikeway, is that correct?
That's correct. And actually, Victor, would you stand up? We have Victor, who is our park director at Venice Beach. Many people know him. He works in the community.
So Victor,
and,
everybody loves Victor, right? Okay, Victor, what do you want to see here? Okay, good, I like that. Free speech.
Councilman Labange,
Now,
Victor will be the one administering this program.
great, so Victor will be administering the program. And I think, Ms. Misakowski, in your remarks, you talked about having the neighborhood council involved, and in the ordinance, it talks about a party of 3, which includes a representative from the general manager's office in this ordinance. Would it be, and it doesn't say the neighborhood council, would it be possible to add a neighborhood council rep and also the senior lead, whoever that he or she may be, so it would be from 3 to 5? Is that a friendly amendment, if that could be?
I have no objection to that.
no objection to add as a neighborhood council representative and the senior lead officer, whoever that person should be. You know, I think the one thing that everybody expressed today, they don't want to see anything kind of control. And who said it so eloquently was the senior lead officer. They don't want to see anything controlled or stomped out. They love Venice the way it is. But there needs to be a little bit of, I guess as I said this before, and it didn't go over well on another issue, but just like down a highway, you have lanes because you don't want to have people bump into each other and hurt each other. And there's no lanes right now that's enforceable, so there needs to be little lanes so people don't bump into and hurt each other. The gentleman who said at 5 in the morning people come, that's a concern anywhere in the city of Los Angeles, and maybe it's a little bit higher here because other than the beautiful sound of what would be crashing waves of the beach, which is a majestic sound, you have noise of people setting up something. So I agree with a lot what everybody said. And I also agree what was expressed by many. But I think the point is there has to be something done in order to regulate it. We heard this in committee. We had, what's 12 and 29, Madam City Clerk? 41 comments, thank you. I was a little faster on that one. 41 people spoke in our hearing that gave their ideas to this here. Not all were supportive, many were opposed. But I think it gives us a chance, and I think the thing that Ms. Misikowski said is that we can review this. And this time of year, because it's rainy, because I know Ms. Hahn just spoke, and she said to me, well, what happens if you have bad luck on a lottery and you get it when it rains all the time? Who knows if this is going to be a rainy day year, so to speak. So is there something to review for those issues as you so expressed? I just think it's a time that we have to do something here, because I don't like to see the fights or hear about the fights. I don't like to see the experience that people have when they go to a public area and police, city resources are used to do things that maybe if we, and I hate to say it like, but paint a little lines, because that's what this is, a little regulation, we could all find a way to make it work and keep it a free-spirited area that it is. And I thank you, and I will rise to support this ordinance with the modification to include neighborhood council, amendment to it, but neighborhood council and the senior lead officer from Pacific Division for that area to add to this. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Other members of the council wishing to speak on this item at this time? Seeing none.
Mr. President, a motion is required on this item inasmuch as it was sent from committee without recommendation.
Okay. Mr. Labange moves, Ms. Misikowski seconds.
And also the city attorney will have a new ordinance with the changes, reflecting the changes.
Okay, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved, as amended. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, do you wish to clear the desk before going into closed session?
Let's do housekeeping, and if we can send parts of 11 forthwith, let's do so. Housekeeping?
Council has motions for posting and referral,
Motion shall be posted and referred.
and there are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Garcetti requests to be excused Wednesday, November 3rd, to arrive at 10:45. That meets council policy, and that is for city business.
Mr. Garcetti is excused.
And that clears the desk for a closed session.
Okay. In conformance with California law, the council will now adjourn into closed session. Sergeants, please clear the chambers. Welcome back into open session. Madam Clerk, next item before us, please.
The first item before council is item number 25, and that settlement in the case of Filippo Favazza versus City of Los Angeles, and the amount of settlement is $225,000.
Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That is approved. Forthwith, please. Next item.
The next item is item number 26, and that settlement in the case of Martha Adams versus City of Los Angeles, and the amount of that settlement is $315,000.
Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That is approved as well, forthwith. Next item.
Item number 27 is a settlement, and that's City versus Chen, et cetera, et al., and that's authorizing the city attorney to expend $700,000, which is the total of settlement, which would bring the total to $4.3 million, and funds are on deposit with the court of $3.6 million.
Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That is approved forthwith.
And
Next
that
item.
clears the desk.
Okay. Members, this is the end of our agenda today. Do we have any announcements? Announcements today? Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening, there's going to be a public safety town hall in the San Fernando, I think an all valley-wide, that is going to be at the Sunkist building in Sherman Oaks. I believe it starts at 6:30 p.m. This evening, and it's being coordinated by Mayor Hahn and Chief Bratton, but would encourage everyone who's able to attend to participate this evening.
Also tonight, there'll be a public workshop on our park ranger program, and also our formation of the Office of Public Safety will be at the Friendship Auditorium on Riverside Drive, just east of Los Feliz. And it starts at 6:30, so I know a lot of people are concerned and welcome to come to that. And also, Mr. Garcetti, I heard on the radio the other day, which I'd like to report to you, that at Gower and Sunset, one of the most famous artists of all time, Paul McCartney, was having a cup of coffee at Starbucks. And the question that the commentators asked on the radio was, did the clerk ask Paul his name as he ordered his latte, as you know? Good to see Paul McCartney in Hollywood, right there at Sunset and Gower.
Other announcements? Any other star sightings? If not, do you have adjourning tributes today? Please rise for adjourning motions. Adjourning motions. Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. You probably read in the Daily News today of two tragic fires that resulted in 2 deaths of elderly women, one which is in my council district. And in addition to reading about their deaths, it talks about the brave heroes of our fire department. One firefighter, Brian Stiers, who literally jumped through a glass window to try and save this elderly woman, Mrs. Eckhart, who passed away at Kaiser Permanente Hospital in Panama City after she was rescued on Tuesday from her burning home by firefighter Brian Stiers of LA Fire Station 89. Her son Brian, who also tried to save her, suffered serious burns in the same fire and is hospitalized at Valley Presbyterian Hospital. So I'd like us to adjourn in her memory, and also to congratulate and thank our firefighters, and particularly Brian Stiers, who risked his life to try to save hers, and they do that each and every day. Thank you.
Ms. Hahn. Adjourning motions. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.